All right, so get ready to dive into some seriously interesting ideas with us today.
Yeah, this one really had us thinking, even arguing in a good way, of
Yeah,
course.
we are revisiting this fascinating conversation with a spiritual leader
Yeah, we mark this one as needing a deeper look.
to unpack some.
But that's what makes it so interesting. What he's really getting at is this. Most of us are chasing more money, more recognition, more stuff.
Right, that seems to be the default setting for a lot of us.
And he's saying that kind of ambition is like being stuck, always straining for something more, never quite satisfied.
So it's not about wanting less, it's about wanting different things, right? Like he's saying our desire to be more is actually pointing us towards a deeper kind of growth, one that goes beyond accumulating stuff.
Exactly. He used this example of like constantly achieving goals, but still feeling empty.
Oh, I remember that.
And that's because, he argues, true fulfillment comes from expanding your impact on the world, not just your possessions. It's about expanding our consciousness, our understanding of ourselves, and the interconnectedness of everything.
It's like that idea of more being about inner expansion, not just external accumulation. And he had that funny bit about making everything yours without asking, like your attention right now.
Oh, he had us cracking up with that one.
I have to admit, he had me laughing. But then it makes you think, what is that desire to possess? Is it about control? Validation?
Right, right. It's like that urge to claim things, to
Mm.
expand our sphere of influence, but maybe in all the wrong ways. And it ties directly to how we define success, doesn't it?
It really does.
He doesn't offer any easy answers.
Which, let's be honest, is often more helpful than a simple solution.
Absolutely. Instead, he throws the question back at us. What does success actually mean to you?
What does it actually mean? Not what we've been told it should mean.
Exactly. Is it the big house, the fancy car, or is it something more? And that's where things get really interesting.
That's what I love about these deep dives. They really make you question everything. So we're really digging into this idea of ambition.
Redefining it, even.
And that leads perfectly into another point you highlighted.
Oh, yeah.
That whole work-life balance thing.
It's the big one, right?
Huge, because if we're talking about aligning our actions with a deeper purpose, then our work has to be a part of that, right? Not just this thing we do to make ends meet.
It can't be separate.
Exactly. You mentioned a question from the audience about, like, how do you actually juggle a demanding career with having a personal life?
Oh, I remember that question.
Which, let's be honest, is something we can probably all relate to at some point.
Oh, for sure.
Like, how do you choose between that crucial board meeting and, say, your mom's birthday? You know, those moments when it feels like something's got to give.
Yeah, tough choices.
And this speaker's response to that very question was so interesting. He kind of flipped the script on the whole work-life balance thing.
He did, didn't he?
He basically said, and I'm paraphrasing here, if your work isn't a part of your life, why are you even doing it?
It's so true when you think about it.
And I know it sounds kind of obvious, but he said it in a way that really made me stop and think.
Because it's not just about finding a job you're passionate about, right?
Yeah.
It's deeper than that. He's talking about integrating those different aspects of ourselves.
Instead of just compartmentalizing.
Exactly. He even pointed out, like, the irony that most of us spend more time with our colleagues than we do with, like, our own families. So if our work is this constant source of, like, stress and unhappiness, it's going to bleed into every other area of our lives.
It's inescapable, really.
It is. And it made me wonder, are we really willing to waste precious time on something that makes us miserable?
Right, because time is the one thing we can't get more of.
Exactly.
You know what this reminds me of?
What's that?
That story he told about his first experience in America.
Oh, yeah.
He sees a sign, it says TGIF, and he's totally confused.
Because he's new to the culture.
Right, and when he finally finds out it stands for Thank God It's Friday, he's floored.
Like, people actually hate their jobs that much.
I know. It's kind of funny, but also kind of sad.
It is, isn't it? It's like we've accepted this idea that work has to be this drag.
It's this thing we just have to endure.
Instead of something that could actually bring us joy and fulfillment.
Yeah. Which, let's be honest, is not always possible, but it's something to strive for, right?
Absolutely. And it all ties back to that idea of purpose, doesn't it?
It always does.
Like, are we living in a way that feels meaningful? Are we making the most of this precious time we have? Because none of us know how much time we have left, do we?
We don't, and that's not meant to be morbid or anything, just a reality check.
Right, a reminder to really examine our priorities.
And maybe make some changes if they're not aligned with what truly matters to us.
Yeah, it's never too late.
So we're talking about purpose, meaning finding work that doesn't make us dread Mondays.
It's a tall order for a lot of people.
It is.
Yeah,
But this speaker, he actually offered some really interesting insights on how we can start to shift that perspective.
he did. And it wasn't what I expected.
Because for him, it all ties back to this idea of leadership. Leadership.
Yeah. And I know what you're thinking. Not everyone sees themselves as a leader. Right.
Right. It's not just about being the CEO or, having a fancy title.
Exactly. And this speaker, he would totally agree with you.
He didn't seem like the type to care much about titles.
Not at all. In fact, I remember him saying something like, show me your ego and I'll fix it right now.
Only he could say something like that and get away with it.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But it really gets to the heart of how he defines leadership, which is like the opposite of ego.
It's about service, understanding.
Exactly. It's about leading from a place of like wanting to lift others up, not just elevate yourself.
And he used his own organization as an example, right? Talking about how demanding his schedule is, constantly on the move, but how smoothly everything runs, even with all the inevitable hiccups. It was impressive to hear him talk about.
It really was. And he attributed that to his team of volunteers, which really struck me because they're not getting paid. They're not doing it for recognition. They're doing it because they believe in the mission.
And because he inspires them.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. He talked about how these volunteers stepped up, took on roles they weren't even trained for, went above and beyond, and he even compared them to a self-flushing toilet.
A self-flushing what?
A toilet. He said things just worked seamlessly, no ego involved.
Okay, now that's an image I won't soon forget.
Right. But it makes you think, doesn't it? Because it all comes back to that TGIF mentality we were talking about earlier. These volunteers, they embody the opposite of that. They find fulfillment in the work itself.
They're not just going through the motions.
Not at all. They're fully invested. And that's what true leadership can create, an environment where people feel valued, connected to something bigger than themselves.
Because they're inspired by the work and by the person leading them.
Exactly. It's not about demanding, it's about inspiring. And that brings us to, well, I think a pretty relevant topic these days, AI.
AI, yeah. It's everywhere you turn these days.
That like everyone's either terrified or completely over the moon about it, no in between.
And understandably so. It's a huge shift. But what I found really interesting about this speaker's take on AI was his, almost radical optimism.
He was excited about it, like
Right.
genuinely excited.
Yeah. Remember that story about him speaking at that AI conference? While everyone else was busy freaking out about robots taking their jobs, he was celebrating the potential for AI to free us from all the, mundane, soul-crushing tasks that we shouldn't be wasting our human energy on anyway.
It was like he flipped the whole script.
Totally. And you know what else he said that really stuck with me?
What's that?
He said it's like those dock workers back in the 1970s protesting the introduction of, this new gantry crane because they were afraid it was going to put them out of work.
It's amazing how history repeats itself, right?
It really is. But just like those dock workers eventually adapted, finding new roles within that changing landscape will have to do the same with AI.
It's about being open to change, right?
Yeah. And embracing the possibilities. Because if we can let go of that fear, AI could actually free us to focus on those uniquely human things that robots can never replicate, like creativity, compassion, connection. And maybe, just maybe, it could even lead us to a world where work isn't just about making a living, but about making a difference. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with this one thought. What would you do if you didn't have to work another day in your life? It's a question the speaker really challenged us to sit with. Would you pursue those passions you've put on hold? Would you spend more time with loved ones? Or would you dedicate yourself to a cause bigger than yourself? Whatever your answer, I hope this conversation has inspired you to rethink those old assumptions about ambition, work, and even your place in this vast, ever-changing universe. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey of discovery. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep diving deep.